I remember the day clearly because nothing about it seemed unusual at first. It was late afternoon, and the heat had started to ease off, the kind of dry heat that settles into your bones when you live near the desert long enough. My mother liked to walk the outer trail behind our small house. It wasn't far, maybe 2 kilometers, but it cut through open land where scrub bushes and loose rocks made the path uneven. She had our dog Cheru with her. He was a medium-sized mixed breed, not particularly big or intimidating, but very alert and loyal. I stayed back to finish some work, expecting them both to return within the hour. I didn't know that walk would turn into something we'd talk about for years. It must have been about 45 minutes later when I heard scratching at the front door. At first I thought it was the wind pushing sand against it, but then it came again, more urgent, sharper. I opened the door and saw Cheru, alone. That alone was enough to make my chest tighten. He never left my mother's side on walks. He didn't greet me the way he usually did. No wagging tail, no jumping. Instead, he barked once, then ran a few steps away, then came back and barked again. It wasn't panic, exactly, but it wasn't normal. He wanted me to follow him. "Where's Emma?" I asked, even though I knew he couldn't answer. Cheru barked again and tugged lightly at my pant leg. Then he ran toward the back trail, stopping after a few meters to look back at me. That's when I knew something was wrong. I grabbed my phone, a bottle of water, and my keys without really thinking it through. I didn't even lock the door behind me. Cheru didn't wait. He started moving as soon as I stepped outside, keeping just far enough ahead to make sure I was following. We reached the trail within minutes. The ground there is sandy and uneven, with patches of rock that can twist an ankle if you're not careful. Cheru moved quickly, but stayed close enough that I wouldn't lose sight of him. Every few seconds he looked back, making sure I was still behind him. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the land. It made everything harder to see clearly, especially in the dips and rises of the terrain. I started calling out, "Emma, Emma." There was no response. After about 10 minutes of walking, Cheru slowed down and began sniffing the ground more intensely. I noticed a disturbed patch of sand, like someone had slipped or fallen. A few scuff marks, one deeper than the others. My heart started to race. Cheru whined softly, then barked once and moved ahead again. Whatever had happened, it wasn't at the start of the trail. It was deeper in, where fewer people went. The further we went, the quieter it became. No birds, no distant sounds, just the wind brushing through dry grass. Cheru suddenly froze. His ears went up and his body stiffened. Then I heard it. A faint, distant yipping sound. Coyotes, we had seen them around before, but they usually stayed away from people. Still, hearing them that close made me uneasy. Cheru let out a low growl, something I had rarely heard from him. We moved faster now. I wasn't thinking about the heat or the uneven ground anymore. Then, in the distance, I saw something. A figure on the ground near a cluster of low bushes. My mother, she was lying on her side, not moving much, and a few meters away I saw movement, shapes slipping between the bushes. Coyotes! Before I could react, Cheru sprinted ahead. He placed himself between my mother and the coyotes, barking loudly and repeatedly, not the excited bark he used at strangers, but a deep, aggressive sound that I had never heard from him before. The coyotes hesitated. There were 3 of them, maybe 4, watching carefully. Sheru didn't back down. He moved forward slightly, barking and snapping, making himself look bigger than he was. I ran the rest of the distance. I dropped to my knees beside her. "Amma, can you hear me?" She opened her eyes slightly and winced. "I slipped," she said weakly. "My leg." I looked down and saw her ankle was swollen, already turning a deep shade of purple. She must have fallen and been unable to stand. Out here, that could become dangerous quickly. Behind me, Sheru was still barking, keeping the coyotes at a distance. I turned to look. The coyotes hadn't left. They were pacing, circling slowly, testing the situation. Sheru moved with them, keeping himself between them and us. Every time one came a little closer, he lunged forward just enough to push it back. He didn't chase them. He didn't leave his position. He was guarding us. I realized then that he must have left my mother only long enough to come get me, and then led me straight back. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. Thankfully, I had a signal. I called a neighbor who had a jeep. "I need help," I said. "Trail behind the house. Amma's injured, and there are coyotes." He didn't ask questions. He said he was coming. While we waited, I gave my mother some water and tried to keep her calm. Sheru never stopped watching the coyotes. Those 20 minutes felt longer than anything I've experienced. The sun dipped lower, and the shadows grew deeper. The coyotes became bolder as the light faded. At one point, one of them moved closer than the others. Sheru charged forward, barking fiercely, forcing it back. He was breathing hard, but he didn't retreat. I stayed close to my mother, holding her hand, trying to stay calm for her sake. Finally, I heard the sound of an engine in the distance. The coyotes heard it too. They paused, then slowly began to retreat, slipping back into the brush. My neighbor arrived with another man, and together we lifted my mother carefully into the jeep. Sheru stayed right beside her, still alert, scanning the surroundings until we were all safely inside. The drive back felt shorter, maybe because the worst of it was over. My mother leaned against me, exhausted but conscious. "He stayed with me," she whispered, nodding toward Sheru. "Didn't leave until he went for you." I looked at him. His tongue was out, and he was panting, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching. He had done exactly what was needed, no more, no less. At the clinic, they confirmed her ankle was fractured, but not severely. She would need rest, but she would recover. That night, after everything had settled, I sat outside with Sheru. I kept thinking about what he had done. He hadn't panicked. He hadn't run away. He had stayed with her, then made a decision to come get help, and then led me back. And when it mattered most, he stood his ground against animals that could have easily overpowered him. There was nothing dramatic about it, no perfect timing, no miracle. Just a dog doing what he understood needed to be done. If he hadn't come back for me, if he hadn't guided me to her, if he hadn't kept those coyotes away, things could have ended very differently. I reached over and patted his head. "You saved her," I said quietly. He leaned into my hand, calm again, like it had just been another day. But for me it wasn't. It was the day I realized just how much one animal can understand, and how much of a difference that can make when it matters most.